Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our last night of our Faith and Focus, a forum for bishop candidates. Can you tell I'm excited? Because we are excited. It is with great joy that we extend a heartfelt greeting to each of our candidates as they gather here to discern and share their vision for the future of our A.M.E. Zion Church. This forum serves as a space for us to come together as a community, united in our commitment to the mission and ministry of the A.M.E. Zion Church. We extend our deepest gratitude to each candidate for their willingness to serve and participate tonight. May the time in this forum be blessed with fruitful discussions, mutual agreement, and a renewed sense of purpose. Once again, welcome to the Faith and Focus Candidates Forum. May our time together be a reflection of God's grace and a testament to the power of faithful leadership. I will now turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Jay Hayes, member of Robinson A.M.E. Zion Church in Sherrall, South Carolina.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the Connectional Young Adults and Christian Ministries, their chairperson, the Reverend Dion Harris, and their co-chairperson, vice chairperson, Ms. Katrina, for allowing me this opportunity to moderate tonight's panel forum. We are so glad to be able to have this discussion, and it's needed as the A.M.E. Zion Church moves towards the General Conference in July. Lots of decisions to make, and we want to be informed as we make those decisions. Before we move into the forum, I want to run down the parameters, the rules of tonight's forum before we bring the candidates on. We will begin. I will introduce each candidate, and each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to offer his or her opening remarks. Following each candidate's opening remarks, then we will move into our question and answer portion of the evening. We will ask a question. The first candidate to answer will receive 2 minutes to answer that question, and then each of the candidates following that candidate will receive 90 seconds to answer the same question, and then we will move in rotation, and we will ask as many questions as our time allows us to ask on this evening. So without further ado, I think we're going to go ahead and move into our introductory portion of the forum. And our first candidate this evening is the Reverend Dr. Darwin D. Little of the Mid-Atlantic Episcopal District. He is the presiding elder of the Bristol District in the East Tennessee and Virginia Conference and the pastor of the Metropolitan A.M.E. Zion Church in Norfolk, Virginia. Dr. Little.
Good evening to everyone, to the YACM Steering Committee. It is good to be here this evening. Thank God for all of you for allowing us to come together and have this forum. It is so good to be here. And so once again, I want to thank all of you for just allowing us to come on tonight.
All right, we're ready to move to our next candidate, who is the Reverend Dr. Melanie Miller from the Northeastern Episcopal District. She is the pastor of the St. Paul A.M.E. Zion Church in Ewing, New Jersey. Dr. Miller.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be in your presence. I am looking forward to this evening and sharing with our young adults in Christian ministry and with my colleagues and with all of the A.M.E. Zion persons that are joining us this evening. We're looking forward to having a good time and to share ourselves with you. So God bless you. And again, thank you, Reverend Harris and the board of the YACM board for inviting us, and greetings to our Board of Bishops and my Bishop, Bishop Dernis Bernard Proctor, and Missionary Supervisor D. Diane Proctor in the whole Northeastern Episcopal District. God bless.
All right, we're ready to bring on candidate number 3, who is the Reverend Dr. Darren H. Mitchell from the Piedmont Episcopal District, and he is the pastor of the Trinity A.M.E. Zion Church in Greensboro, North Carolina. Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you so very much, Brother Hayes. I'm glad that you are moderating and not Keynes. I didn't know Keynes, but I do know Hayes. What a wonderful spirit you are. Thank you for your labors of love as you continue to do ministry to lift our history. I'm so delighted and honored to be a part of this wonderful gathering of candidates, my colleagues, and to celebrate those who've gone before us, been blessed by the exchange, blessed to be a part of this meaningful dialogue with some of Christendom's greatest personalities. The Young Adults in Christian Ministries, I believe, is God's gift to the A.M.E. Zion Church. And we're thankful and grateful to God for your ministry and your love for the church. So good evening to everybody. Look forward to sharing, having some fun, and enjoying the fellowship on this evening. God bless.
Right, and our 4th and final candidate for the evening is the Reverend Dr. Dwayne A. Walker from the Piedmont Episcopal District also, and he is the pastor of the Little Rock A.M.E. Zion Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dr. Walker.
Well, good evening and praise the Lord, everybody. God bless you. Thank you so much for the privilege to gather on tonight. I have watched with great interest the previous forums that have taken place and have been very excited about the questions and look forward to having my chance to be a part of this discussion. I love the A.M.E. Zion Church. It's the church of my birth. It's the church of my choice. And I thank God for the Young Adults in Christian Ministries, led by Reverend Dion Harris and all of the great persons who serve on the steering committee of that great ministry. I happen to have been a part of the very first steering committee. Many may know that Bishop Darren Moore and I are great friends. He was the first chairperson of YACM, and we met on the campus of Livingstone College way back in the day when that organization first began. And he appointed me as the chairman of the mentoring committee. And so grateful to see how this organization has evolved, and looking forward to great dialogue on tonight with all of you. God bless you, Zion. Let's get into this. Amen.
All right, I think that they're going to bring all of our candidates onto the screen, and we're ready to begin our question and answer portion for the evening. I will call upon each candidate when it's your turn to answer, and we'll just move through as many questions as we can during the time that we have to share together. These questions have been submitted by young adults, from what I understand, and maybe not so young adults. So they have been pulled into YACM, and they're the questions that we're going to be asking tonight. And so the first question will be answered first by Dr. Little, who is candidate number 1. And that first question for this evening is: list your successes as a pastor or presiding elder that would assure us that you have a proven track record of leaving a place better than you found it. Please be specific as to how your track record will transform our Zion.
Thank you for that question, Hayes. A very good question. I have had the privilege and opportunity to pastor churches in the Piedmont, also in the Blue Ridge, also in Denver, Colorado, and now in Virginia. Every church that I've pastored, I have left the church better than what it was. Um, the first church I pastored was in Ellisville, North Carolina, Thomas Chapel, and that church was very in need of a lot of repair. Every church that I've gone to, I've had to go in and reconstruct the church structure. We did a lot of work at Thomas Chapel, left there, went to Bessie Chapel. We did a lot of remodeling at Bessie Chapel. Left there, went to Mount Olive in Monroe, North Carolina, where we remodeled the whole church, well, part of the church in Monroe. Left there and went to St. Stephen in Hamlet, North Carolina, where we did a lot of work. Also, when I left there, I went to St. John in Rutherfordton, North Carolina, where we did a total remodeling of the sanctuary in that church. And when I went to Denver, Colorado, the church did not have air conditioning. And so we redid the whole church. We installed AC units. The church never had AC. And so even here at Metropolitan, we have remodeled the whole entire sanctuary and the third floor of the church. So every church that I've been to, I have done great work, leaving it better than I found it. Not only physical wise, but also spiritual wise. Every church that I've pastored, we've had great success of growing. And so that's my answer. And so I thank God for that question. Great question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. We'll now hear from candidate number 2, Dr. Miller.
Good evening again. Great question. I have pastored 4 churches in the A.M.E. Zion Connection. My first church was in Gates, North Carolina, a church that was labeled as one that should have been closed. But with all 4 churches, and especially my first 3, going in churches that were struggling, not only with debt, but with hurt people, with people that needed healing and wholeness and empowerment, doing training, finding alternative modes of income, streams of income, doing remodeling projects, putting in furnaces, Barrack Memorial, the old sanctuary, and at St. Paul, where I currently am, it's a lot of just empowering people, doing training, teaching, and doing things that help people to feel motivated about the work that we do for Christ.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. We will now hear from Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you so much for that question. My pastoral ministry began as a student at Hood Theological Seminary, and my first appointment was to supply a church. The late Bishop Reuben L. Speaks assigned me to go to a town called Newport, Tennessee. And from Salisbury, North Carolina to Newport, Tennessee was a 3.5-hour hump. I had a 72 Pontiac Le Mans, money green, that I drove from Tampa, Florida after graduating Bethune-Cookman College. And so it was a joy to go up those mountains. I'd never been to mountains a day in my life, but because I told God I'd go wherever God would send me and would gladly follow the godly judgment of the bishop, I went. I've served in rural churches, rural urban churches, suburban churches, and urban churches. I've been blessed to serve for the last 25 years as pastor of historic congregations. And might I tell you that serving those churches has been a joy in balancing both innovation and tradition. And the Lord has blessed our ministry in phenomenal ways. And I thank God for the opportunity to serve God's people everywhere God sent me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. And we'll now hear from Dr. Walker.
Thank you so much for the question about a proven track record. That's actually my platform, a proven track record of excellence in ministry. I've had the privilege to serve 3 congregations. The first one being the Metropolitan A.M.E. Zion Church in Detroit, Michigan, which was a medium-sized church. When we arrived, there was about 30 active members, and we were blessed to see tremendous growth in that first appointment in Detroit. The Lord began to show me some things in that church that prepared me for my second church, which was the Jones Tabernacle A.M.E. Zion Church in Indianapolis, Indiana. In the church that I pastored in Metropolitan, we were able to do many renovations to that facility, as well as build ministry and bring a full-time ministry to that congregation that I'm sure contributed to the type of growth that we experienced. And from there, we went on to Metropolitan, then the Jones Tabernacle, who were able to renovate and remodel and build ministry. And then now we're at Little Rock Church, where God has blessed us to grow spiritually, numerically, and even to build housing to help those who are without.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker, and each of our candidates for your thorough answers of that first question. We are going to take a pause for a moment now. We have one other candidate who has been able to join us, so we want to allow the Reverend Dr. M. Luther Hill to come now and introduce himself. We're going to give him his 2 minutes, from what I understand, to introduce himself, tell us some about himself, and then we'll come back and continue our question and answer portion for the evening. So, Dr. Hill, you have the screen for 2 minutes now.
Thank you so very much. Please pardon my being late. I was doing a little church business that was urgent. I am Pastor M. Luther Hill, pastor of Clinton Chapel A.M.E. Zion Church in New Bern, North Carolina, and I'm a native of Montgomery, Alabama. I've been A.M.E. Zion all my life. My father was A.M.E. Zion minister, and I've gone to our school, Hood Theological Seminary, and worked in construction all my life. I was taught how to build houses from the ground up since I was about 12 years old, and it has been a tool that I use in pastoring churches. Like the other candidates, churches I've pastored needed renovation, and the church that I'm pastoring right now, we are doing some renovations, making sure that the church is a safe place. We're grateful to God for opportunity to serve with YACM. I was the co-chair under Scott Moore, and I was over the mentoring. We wrote the piece in mentoring that aids the youth, a partnership with YACM, and helps YACM partnership with ACE. And we are grateful to God for that mentoring piece. God has blessed us in a special way. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. And we're going to bring all 5 of our candidates now back on the screen so that we can continue in our question and answer portion of our forum. So now let us go to our next question. And this question will first be answered by Dr. Miller. And the question is, what would you do to help the growth of smaller congregations, which make up a major portion of our Zion church? And many of these churches could be characterized as churches that have pastors and members who are working very hard, but there's no physical growth and there are no major improvements. They may be struggling with issues such as outdated technology, dirt parking lots, busted AC units, that sort of thing. So I think the individual who put this question together is saying, we have a lot of small churches that may be hurting. What would you do to help the growth of those smaller congregations, of which Zion has many?
Oh, great question. As I said, I started off with a very small church, one that was dying. My husband's first church was not dying. The church wasn't dying. Someone said it was dying. But I believe that the number one thing we have to do is get to know the churches, get to know the people, and discover what are their challenges, what are their strengths, whether there are opportunities, and what are the threats to those congregations. I believe there's a lot of training that has to go into effect, but we have to get to know people so that we can understand what are the issues. So as an Episcopal leader, I believe it's important to learn about each of the churches. That is one of the things I've done during my campaign, is visiting churches, not just for the fun of it, but visiting to learn what is the status of our churches, our congregations, the members themselves, and the communities that they serve. If we have no awareness of what that looks like, then we will not know what we need to do. We'll just keep giving people things that we think they're supposed to have, or using our experiences, and it may not be relevant to that church. And so we must take the time to get to know our ministers, our clergy, making sure right fit, but also helping these churches to understand what is the need, training to the need, and discovering what resources are available so that we can make sure that these local churches, because that is where we have to go, local churches have what they need to survive and to provide the ministry, quality ministry, not quantity, quality ministry in the community that we serve.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. We will now hear from Dr. Mitchell.
Great question. One of the things that I've been blessed to take a part of is an initiative through Hood Theological Seminary that has a program that deals with Faith, Learn, and Thrive, where persons are trained to be congregational coaches, and then they are sent out to coach congregations, helping them dream and imagine what God can do through their ministry. As a product of what one would call a small congregation, I understand what happens when Episcopal leadership comes alongside congregations and partners with presiding elders and pastors to maximize the resources that are in the congregation. Oftentimes, we try to have smaller congregations mimic larger congregations, not understanding the personalities of each congregation. And I think and believe that if we allow for congregations to grow organically and authentically, and to coach them and to provide resources wherever they are, I believe God can expand the witness of that congregation to the glory of God and the growth of our church. Small churches, all churches matter.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. And now we will hear from Dr. Walker.
Thank you for that question. One of the things I want to share is I believe that the strong can help bear the infirmities of the weak, and that we're all in this together. How do we come alongside smaller churches to identify what their strengths may be and help them to become even stronger? And then, of course, provide resources and training from the conference at the district level, utilizing senior pastors to help younger pastors or not as seasoned pastors to help them to develop those particular ministries, identifying what may be available in the community, how that church can serve that community, even with its limitations, how we can celebrate who they are and utilize skills from other churches that may be near them to help them to become even stronger in their mission.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. And now we will hear from Dr. Hill.
Thank you for the question. My first two churches, one church had 6 members and the other one had 13 on a circuit. One of the things that we did was we went in and we talked about where the church was at the present moment. Knowing where the church was at the present moment, then begin to minister to the needs of the people in the church and also elevate the thinking of the people in the church. My church theme has always been, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I found out as we get people to believe that and live towards that goal in their lives, then God will begin to work and do marvelous things in their lives. Then we worked on them being consistent in their tithes and offerings, because everybody who follows God's will in giving, God will in return bless them. And that has been what has happened in the churches that I've pastored. Leading from the front, leading by example has been good for the churches I've pastored. And then learning the grants, doing grants, and saving money by not overspending has been a blessing. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. And now we'll hear from Dr. Little.
Thank you, Hayes. Great question. I think that we got to get out of the habit of saying that my church is bigger than yours, my church is better than yours, and work together. I think that we can work together by, I know when I had the opportunity to visit growing churches, churches that were growing, had members, a lot of members. And what I did, I was able to shadow that pastor to see the things that was working in his church that I need to bring back to my church. And so if I, got elected as a bishop, what I would do, I would make sure that my smaller congregations, my smaller pastors, my smaller congregations would partner with some of the larger churches so they can have an opportunity to see what's working in your church, why your church growing. And I think that is the key, partnership. Instead of us fighting against one another, I think that we need to come together and work together. And I really think that that would matter a whole lot, because when we look at it, all of our churches really are dwindling down. And so we all have to realize now a way that we've got to bring our congregations back and bring people into our churches.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little, and to each of our candidates for your thorough answers of that, our second question. We are now ready for our third question of the evening, and we're asking Dr. Mitchell if he will answer first. And here's a hot topic question. Name the biggest issue in Zion. What unpopular stance are you willing to take that will address that issue?
The biggest issue in Zion. Wow, Hayes, I thought you were my friend. I'm not sure if I'm in a position. I think one of the things that all of us are struggling with is the issue of resources and the allocation thereof. That we are facing a scarcity in many of our places and our way stations in Zion. And we're going to have to take some serious looks at how we manage and steward the resources. And of course, that's not popular in and of itself, but I think we're going to have to look at some levels of infrastructure. And I'm not sure how that's going to look, because every place and space is different in our Zion. And to make this a blanket issue, I think would take away the uniqueness and the serious difference that we find depending on where our churches are located and the regions where they're located. Resources are dwindling. We understand that. And we see that happening at every level of the church's life. And I think we have to look at infrastructure and be very cautious about how we move and shift. So I'm not sure how unpopular my stance would be, but I do know this. When we start talking about resources, we do need to be very, very mindful that people are very, very cautious about how they deal with this issue of money. So I would say that finances are a major issue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. And next in the hot seat is Dr. Walker.
The seat is hot. Thank you so much for the question. I agree with Dr. Mitchell that resources are challenging for all of us. We have needs in our denomination, and certainly the needs in the local church. Many of us are struggling, trying to just make ends meet, to the challenge of doing ministry, at the same token, meeting all of our financial requirements. We need to find ways to identify other streams of revenue without compromising our identity as a church. How do we do that? How do we find other streams of revenue so that we can not depend so heavily just on what comes across the offering plate, but other ways to utilize our facilities and our partnerships in order to bring about greater resources to do the ministry we're called to do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. And now the hot potato passes to Dr. Hill.
Thank you once again. I do concur with the last two speakers. However, I do believe that we don't have a money problem. Sometimes we don't put things in proper perspective so we can actually see. We have enough money to do what we need to do, and we have enough resources. It's the sharing of those resources and the tapping in of those resources and the accountability of those resources that is unpopular, keeping us accountable of those things. I do believe that in every situation, every church that I pastor, I've done a little survey, and every church that I've pastored, I noticed that if everyone did their part, it really does not take more than no more than 4 persons to come up with the resources for your claims. So most people, they have problems with the claims. But if you look at it, and then if you add the preacher in there and make sure that the preacher gives his share, you've almost cut your claims in half. And in some instances, the preacher's giving pays the claims, and everything else is working towards the rest of the operation.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. The fire now falls on Dr. Little.
Amen. Thank you, Hayes. And listen, I really think that our major problem is church growth. Because I think that if we were able to grow our churches, I think that would solve a whole lot of the financial problems in our congregations. I know a lot of people think that our general claims is the key problem in our church, but general claims is not the problem in our church. I really think that it's church growth and how we manage to combine our resources together that will make our church grow and that will make us become a living church, a church that will prosper, a church that will thrive in this century. I really think that is church growth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. And finally, the hot seat is yours, Dr. Miller.
Amen. Great question. I would say the biggest challenge to our church is what the people see as the biggest challenge. And so over the years, I've done a number of surveys, and in my talking with members from across the nation and around the world, accountability and integrity of leadership is a major problem, because that is where a lot of the other challenges generate from. Accountability is so important that we're able to account for ourselves, to give an account without excuse or blame, but to hold others accountable, whether they're bishops, whether they're presiding elders, pastors that we may appoint, and to say, no, not on my watch, and to help people along, because our inability to have accountability and integrity is what leads to financial issues, what leads to hurt people and brokenness, and even impacts our congregational growth, because people are leaving, and we know that hurt people hurt more people. So I believe one of the biggest challenges, and that's one I'm willing to fight. I have the courage to get in there and to make those decisions and to be held accountable for my actions as a leader.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, and each of you for answering that one of our more difficult questions for the evening. We're going to move now to our next question, and we're going to ask Dr. Walker if he will answer first on this question. Before I ask the question, I just want to say it's nice to see in the comments our brothers and sisters from our overseas conferences, as well as everybody that's stateside. It's especially nice to see those folks that are tuning in from Jamaica and other parts of the world. We're glad to see you with us tonight. All right, question number 4. To be a good leader, you must be a good follower. If we ask your presiding elder and or your bishop how supportive are you to their leadership, what would their response be? So, in short, what would leadership say of your fellowship? Dr. Walker, please answer first.
Thank you for the question. I believe that my bishop, as well as my presiding elder, would say that I'm a team player. I believe in following my bishop and my presiding elder because as I serve as a pastor, I want people to follow me. And how can I expect them to follow me if I don't follow those who have authority over my ministry? And so I've tried to always be very cooperative with all of the initiatives of our bishop, all of the initiatives of our presiding elder, as we all work together to build a greater Zion. We're all on the same side. We all want the same thing. And I do want to do everything I can to help undergird the work of the A.M.E. Zion Church as my bishop and my presiding elder seek to lead both the conference and the districts that we serve.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. We'll now hear from Dr. Hill.
Thank you for the question. I really believe that my presiding elder, as well as all of the bishops and presiding elders that I've served, would say that I am one who is a team player, but also one who is an independent thinker and can bring ideas to the table. I just happen to have served as chief of protocol for 9 bishops and presently serving as chief of protocol for Bishop Monroe, my bishop, and my presiding elder. I was just named the finance chair, and I make sure that she gets to where she needs to go, and I try to make sure that I'm a face where she is if she's preaching. And I think that we have a great working relationship. Not only presiding elder and bishops, I believe that my comrades in the conference would say the same thing about me, that I'm easy to talk to and I don't mind working with anyone. And I believe that God has blessed us that even as candidates for bishop, this group of people that we have now, we are actually good friends and work good together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. We'll now hear from Dr. Little.
Leadership has always been one of the key aspects of my life. Being in the Marine Corps and military, leadership has always been a great trait. And you're right, a good leader must be a good follower. John Maxwell said a leader is one that goes away, knows the way, and shows the way. I have had the privilege and opportunity to pastor under several bishops, and each one of those bishops would tell you that Darwin Little was a great leader, that Darwin Little was a person that followed them. And I believe that my presiding elders would tell you the same thing, because I don't believe in fighting leadership. I believe that's what leadership does. Leadership, you stand beside your leader. You help hold their hands up. You help hold their arms up. And so I think that it's very imperative to be a great leader in every aspect. And I think that my presiding elders and bishops would tell you that I have been a good leader.
Thank you, Dr. Little. And we'll now hear from Dr. Miller.
Amen. My Episcopal leader, current Episcopal leader, Bishop Dennis Vernon Proctor, and my presiding elder, the beautiful presiding elder, Letitia Hill Gadet, I can tell you they would say I am very supportive of their ministry, of their mission, as whether it is in the Episcopal district, the conference, or in our district. I do everything that is necessary to make sure that our mission is carried out, the mission that they've laid before us. I represent us well. I represent our Episcopal district, our conference, and our districts well. I have been places to represent the bishop in his absence, namely the naming of the USNS Harriet Tubman to speak in the because Bishop was not unable to go. So I believe my leaders know that I'm a follower, that I'm a greater supporter, and that I will do everything to ensure that the mission that they lay before us, that I will help and do anyway to ensure that we achieve that mission in the best way that we can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. And now we'll hear from Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you. Great. I believe that my bishop, Bishop Darrell Brewster Starnes Sr., and my presiding elder, Dr. Michael E. Ellis, would say that I have the ability to work with those in authority over me, that I understand authority that I share with those with whom I share ministry, and they will be able to say that I practice servant leadership with those who are under my care. They have both watched the ministry that I provided, and I believe that as one set under authority, I understand that principle and practice and have exercised it as the discipline in the Word of God has so stipulated. I believe that God has blessed me to understand the principle and spiritual discipline of submission, and I practice that in everything I seek to do as one being in authority and set under authority.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. And we are now ready to move to our next question. And Dr. Hill will ask you to answer this one first. And this question is, again, I want to say that these questions were put together by members of our Zion. So, these have been submitted. As Zion in the United States decreases in size, would you support reducing the connectional budget to make it easier on the remaining churches? Dr. Hill.
With our system and budget, the Connectional Budget Board and the allocation and apportionments, yes, I would decrease, but I would allow those conferences to sort it out like is prescribed in our discipline. Even as there are a change in locale, there will be change in where the money goes, where the strength is. Those are some of the things that we presently do, that as increases in some areas and decreases in other areas, there's a reapportionment. And we've been doing that. I think we've done it well. And there are some conferences who, even when asked to take a decrease, some churches have said, well, I'm fine with where I am. And they work it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Let's now hear from Dr. Little.
Hayes, if you don't mind, could you bring that question back up again, please?
I believe that somebody can bring it up for you. And it's, as Zion in the United States decreases in size, would you support reducing the connectional budget to make it easier on the remaining churches?
Yes, I would support it, but we also have to realize that being a bishop, you're on a board, and you can't make the decision by yourself. I would support it with the board. because I do know that a lot of our smaller churches are struggling. And so I would consider doing what I could do to help make these churches a thriving church as well as the bigger and larger congregations. So yes, I would support it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. And now, Dr. Miller.
Uh, Thank you. Great question. As that is a common question and concern for many of our churches around across the United States, especially. Our problem is not the money. Our problem is the stewardship. But saying that, I believe there has to be some reorganization in how the apportionment is done. But at the same time, we need to discover and do training and learn how do we bring in more, as was said earlier, other streams of income that can offset some of the connectional budget concerns for our local churches. So as Dr. Little just said, a bishop would not make that determination in a vacuum. But I believe I would advocate that we look at how do we do some reorganization and apportionment, but how we are intentional about finding other streams, grants, etc., even opening our own bank if we need to, but leveraging our incomes across the conferences and the denomination so that we can have other flowing income coming in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you so much for the question. I will begin by saying that I've had the privilege of serving on the Budget and Apportionment Committee for the General Conference for the last 2 General Conferences. And what I would say to that question is that whatever the Budget and Apportionment Committee brings to the General Conference floor has to be voted on by the General Conference and then executed by the bishop. And so I can't help but support whatever the General Conference determines and mandates. And if through those mediums we get to that place where there is a reduction, then I would have no other choice but to execute as an episcopate what the General Conference mandates. And so therefore, I would start there in terms of the Budget and Apportionment Committee to look at how we can do some movement. But reduction, I think, has to be the last resort because we have so many needs domestically and internationally. And so I think what we have to do, and we propose this, and I do believe that we're moving toward actually doing the kind of work to study where we are and where we need to be.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. And finally, Dr. Walker on this question.
Thank you. I've had the privilege of serving for the last 3 or 4 quadrennials, actually, on the Connectional Budget Board, and in fact on the executive committee of the Connectional Budget Board. And I can tell you that the struggle is that while we have not increased the budget over the last 2 quadrennials, there is not enough resources to do what is needed to be done. There are many of our areas that are crying out for more resources, and at the same time, where do we get them from? So we need to find ways to perhaps look how we can reallocate and maybe shift some of the responsibility from areas that are struggling to areas that are doing perhaps a little better, and shift the weight some. It sounds good to say we would reduce the budget. I would love to see that happen. I would love to see my taxes decreased, but unfortunately that is not possible. But we do the best that we can with what we have, and to be sure that we act responsibly in how we share and allocate our resources.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. I would hope that we can get 2 more questions in, but we'll see. how we do with this next one. This is a fun one, maybe my favorite of the night. Okay, Dr. Little, if you were a fruit, what kind of fruit would you be and why?
Oh man, that's a great question. I was ready for that question. I heard them talk about that on the last forum. I would be a grape. And the reason I would be a grape is because when grapes are squeezed and pressed, the goodness come out of grapes. And so I'm saying that because when I'm squeezed and when I'm pressed, the goodness comes out of me. And so when I'm squeezed and pressed and that goodness come out of me, we can sit back and feast on the good wine. So I would love to be a grape.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. Dr. Miller.
I, yes, it's a fun question. I would say an apple because of the versatility of the apple, but at the same time, they are sturdy. They have a heart. They have an ability to encourage the body to do so many things if you eat them consistently. They have the ability to bring about healing and wholeness with consistency. And I just feel they lead the bunch of all fruit, and they're a leader out there, and they just have so many properties that can be utilized to enhance, to grow, to beautify, to heal, to make whole. So an apple would be my choice.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell, what kind of fruit?
Well, I am from Florida, and growing up in Tampa, Florida, my grandfather had orange trees on in the yard, and oranges, of course, bring vitamin C, of course, but the trees themselves, when the wind blows, you can smell the fragrance of the trees, and so it's not just the orange itself, but it's the tree it grows on. Uh, Both the orange and the trees bring such a citrusy smell. They have the ability to just really just spruce up the atmosphere. So the orange itself, the tree it grows on, reminds me of what the Lord has done in my life. I came from the right tree, and God has given me the gifts and the abilities to produce, squeezed or unsqueezed.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. What kind of fruit, Dr. Walker?
I'm going to say a pomegranate. It's a lot to me, and you got to work hard to get at it. But when you get it, it's worth the struggle.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Okay, Dr. Hill, what kind of fruit?
I think I would be a grapefruit. Grapefruit because of the properties, helps you lose weight, and there are some that are very sweet. Um, and I believe that in what we do, we need to be kind enough to people that they'll know that we love them, but we have to be strong enough for people to know that what we do is going to take an effort. And I believe that the grapefruit has the property of letting you know that sometimes you just have to cut the fat of a thing and go forth and be your best lean self.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. I thank you all for your answers to my favorite question of the night. I wish that we could ask another, but unfortunately, the dispensation of our time has elapsed for the question and answer portion of the evening. So we're now going to move into that time that each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to come back on screen by his or herself and say what's burning on your heart with your closing remarks. So anything you didn't get to say that you want to say to Zion and to young adults in Christian Ministries, now is the time for you to do that. I have enjoyed being with you all this evening, and we're going to move now into those closing remarks, and we're going to hear from candidate one, Dr. Darwin D. Little.
Thank you once again, Hayes, and the Young Adult Christian Ministry Committee for this forum. Listen, a little goes a long way. That's my slogan. That's what I'm sticking to. And The company BASF had a slogan that they use, and that slogan was, "We didn't make the product, we just want to make it better." Listen, I'm Darwin Donnell Little. I don't want to make Zion. What I want to do is help make Zion better. And I believe that I have the leadership skills. I believe I have the integrity. I believe I'm faithful, and I have the experience. And so that's what I am running on: life for Zion, leadership, integrity, faithfulness, and experience. And so I ask for your vote. I ask for your prayers. When we go to the General Conference, vote little. And when you vote little, realize that a little will go a long way. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Little. And we'll now hear closing remarks from Dr. Melanie Miller.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure. I again thank you, Mr. J. Hayes McClendon, and to Reverend Dante Harris and the whole board of the Young Adults in Christian Ministry. It has been such a truly a pleasure and an honor to be on this evening with you all and to share with my colleagues this evening. God has given me a strong vision for the A.M.E. Zion Church, one that begins with strengthening our faith in Him and strengthening our faith in our church, that goes on to strengthening our foundation in Jesus the Christ and the foundation that was laid by our founders, and building and cultivating strong families of faith so that Zion would have a strong future. And so I'm a person who comes with faith, integrity, and compassion, honor, courage, and commitment as I lead, and one who is dedicated to Zion having a strong future, not only as those who are in leadership, but for those of our younger people, our global leaders, and our women, ensuring that we have opportunities, mentoring, training, so that we can acknowledge and recognize what they bring to the table so that we can have effective leadership now, and that as we cultivate these young people and global leaders, that we will have or will be building strong leaders for our future. So Zion, I want you to remember this other M&M from New Jersey, Melanie Miller for Bishop, who is Zion's choice for a strong future. I thank you again for this opportunity, and may God bless all of you as we continue and head towards the General Conference, that I will have not only your prayers, but I will have your vote. Melanie Miller for Bishop. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. And now we will hear closing remarks from Dr. Darren H. Mitchell.
Let me say thank you again for this opportunity to share with colleagues and friends and to share with the family of Zion. In less than 87 days, the A.M.E. Zion Church will converge in Greensboro, where we will be wrestling and grappling with very serious issues. We're dealing with a global pandemic that has crippled many of our long-standing institutions. There is much to be said about the social landscape of our world. And I believe that if there was ever a need for a relevant and redemptive, relational and radical African-American church, that time is now. I'm Darren Mitchell. I'm a candidate for bishop. I desire to be a bishop in the A.M.E. Zion Church because of what the A.M.E. Zion Church has given to me from my infancy till now. I believe that God has given me gifts and graces to not only speak to my Zion, but also speak for our Zion. There are voices all across our church, and there's an army rising up. We're not only faced with an upcoming general conference, but friends, we're also faced with a general election, one of the most critical times in our country's life is taking place in November. And I believe that the Freedom Church has what is necessary to galvanize the voices, the hands and feet of people who believe that this church still has relevance. This church is still redemptive. My ministry has spanned for nearly 36 years. The Lord has blessed me to be an instructor, to nurture pastors and preachers. And I believe that before the second coming of Christ, in the words of George Barna, I believe in the second coming of the church. I believe in the second coming of the African American church. And I love the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. And I believe that every church has capacity and ability to reach and serve this present age. And so I ask that you would be mindful of that, to be in prayer for our church, for the leadership that must be elected and selected, for the hard decisions that must be made. And above all, I pray that healing, wholeness, and prosperity will flow through our church in such a miraculous way that all the world will have to stop and see what God is doing in Zion. I believe that God is present in our church, and I believe that our best days are yet to come if we will bring our best wherever God places and plants us. Again, I'm Darren Mitchell. I'm moving with Jesus, and I invite you to move with Mitchell. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. We will now hear closing remarks from Dr. Dwayne A. Walker.
Thank you again, Brother McClendon. You've done a wonderful job serving as moderator. And again, thank you to Reverend Harris and all of the wonderful members of YACM. I want to also thank a good friend of mine, Yolanda Johnson. I had recently just landed back in Charlotte from being in Chicago, where I was privileged to preach at my home church this past Sunday, and landed at 6:15 and could not get back home or to my office. But thankfully, she is a business owner out here at the Charlotte airport and has worked out a way for me to have an office to be a part of this platform. And so I'm struggling with lighting issues. So forgive me for looking like a California raisin on here, but I do thank you for the privilege to be a part of this gathering. I love the A.M.E. Zion Church. Again, it's the church of my birth. It's the church of my choice. I have a proven track record for excellence in ministry, where God is glorified, where Jesus is magnified, when people are edified, and where faith is fortified. And I do believe that when God is glorified, Jesus is magnified, people are edified, faith is fortified, that ministry will be multiplied. I've seen it multiplied at Metropolitan Detroit. I've seen ministry multiplied at Jones Tabernacle in Indianapolis, and I'm seeing ministry multiply here in the city of Charlotte. Even right now, I thank God that while we have suffered a tremendous crisis here in the city of Charlotte, where 4 police officers were killed on yesterday, there is a gathering at the Little Rock A.M.E. Zion Church, a prayer vigil. They were asked us to open up our doors so that we can have prayer for those families in the city that's affected by that horrible incident. We've always tried to find a way to be helpful, and I pray to God that if you elect me, I will do all I can to bring the same level of passion and productivity to the areas I am blessed to serve. I love this church. I never would do anything to hurt the church, but everything I can to help the church. Please walk with Walker. Please vote for me in 2024 for Bishop in A.M.E. Zion Church. I love you. God bless you. Continue to have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. I want to take this opportunity before we bring the last candidate to say thank you again to the Young Adults in Christian Ministries for hosting these forums as we move towards the General Conference. And thank you for thinking enough of me to bestow upon me the honor of moderating this, the final Faith in Focus Forum. I have enjoyed it so very much. Again, I am J. Hayes McClendon. I am a proud member of the Robinson A.M.E. Zion Church, where my pastor is the Reverend Dr. Jeanette Turner Holt. And I'm so grateful to have been able to share this time with you together. And I encourage each of you to be prayerful as we move towards Greensboro at the General Conference in July. We'll now hear our final closing remarks from our final candidate, the Reverend Dr. M. Luther Hill, and then we will have our closing remarks and parting words from Sister Katrina the co-chairperson of YACM.
Once again, thank you for this opportunity, YACM. You are doing a marvelous work, and we are grateful to God for your being who you are at this moment in time. I am Pastor A.M.E. candidate for bishop, and I believe that we need to renew Zion's loyalty, rethink Zion's logic, while referencing Zion's legacy. Sometimes in life, you need to know that the systems that you have, they are working fine. You just have to work them. And I believe that's what's going on with our A.M.E. Zion Church. We have some fine tuning to do, and we have the ability to do it because Zion has blessed us to do some marvelous things over the years. Zion has given us opportunities to be trained and taught in its own schools, and even pushed us further to other schools and colleges that we as Zionites have been in the forefront of those colleges and schools' existence. We're grateful to God because even now at the church that I'm pastoring, the Clinton Chapel A.M.E. Zion Church, the system has worked so that we are a debt-free church, and we are working ministries that the Lord may be pleased with. And I believe that as a bishop in the A.M.E. Zion Church, that we can go forward and do the great things that God has called us to do. We're in a place that we can make a difference in a world that is looking for someone to lead them and guide them. The A.M.E. Zion Church has been that in the past, and we know and are assured that we can do it because we are the Freedom Church. God has shown us that He is with us through the opportunities He has given the A.M.E. Zion Church in the country. We are being blessed abroad, and we are being blessed domestically in the States. And we're grateful to God that He is moving on our behalf. I'm Pastor A.M.E. candidate for bishop. Rethink Zion's loyalty. Renew Zion's logic while referencing Zion's legacy. Thank you very much. I need your vote.
As we draw the curtains on our intentional conversation with Episcopal candidates, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all involved, to the candidates who graciously shared their visions and aspirations, to the moderators who steered our discussions with finesse, and to the Christian Education Department, Young Adults and Christian Ministries, and the Star of Zion for their unwavering support and collaboration. We want to say thank you. And to you, our viewers, your engagement and commitment have been the heartbeat of these conversations. Your dedication to understanding and discerning amidst the dialogue is what drives our shared journey towards the General Conference in July. As we reflect on the perspectives and insights shared, may each word spoken and each moment witnessed resonate within you as you navigate your decisions. Let the exchange of ideas and the spirit of community guide you as we prepare to convene for the General Conference. Thank you for being a vital part of this journey. Together, we may continue to seek understanding, foster unity, and embrace the transformative power of intentional conversation. Please note that all previous forums can be accessed on the YACM Facebook page and all Star of Zion platforms. We thank you so much for joining us and have a great, great night. See you all at General Conference. Bye.